All right, today we're going to do section 2.6, which is equation of parallel and perpendicular lines. So our goal today is to identify parallel and perpendicular slopes and then write equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. So first let's talk about what parallel and perpendicular lines are. Hopefully this is all review. Go ahead and pause the video and copy down all this information. When you're done copying down all that stuff, make sure you really remember this part. This is probably the most important line. This is probably the new part. The slope of parallel lines is the exact same thing. So parallel slopes are the same. But then for perpendicular lines, they are the opposite sign. So like positive or negative, like opposite sign. And then reciprocal means flipped. So it has to be both of those things in order to be perpendicular. All right, so let's give this a try. So if we look at our first two equations here, they're both in slope-intercept form. So we can easily see our slope right here. We have a 1/2 slope and a 2. So we can clearly see they're not parallel, right? They're not the same slope, but they are reciprocals. Now, we can't say that they're perpendicular lines, though, because they're not the opposite sign. In order to be perpendicular, you have to be reciprocal and opposite sign. So these ones are actually going to be neither. Let's look at example 2. First one, we have a slope of 2/3. And let's see what the second one is. Now, it's not in slope-intercept form yet. So let's go ahead and put this, solve for y, and put this in slope-intercept form. So we'll go ahead and subtract our 2x on both sides. We get negative 3y is equal to negative 2x plus 6. And then divide by negative 3. Make sure you divide everything by negative 3. So we end up with y is equal to, those two negatives make a positive, so we get a positive 2/3 x and then minus 2. So if we look, the slope here is also a 2/3. So our slopes are both the exact same thing. So we can go ahead and say that these two equations, these two lines, are parallel. And you can abbreviate parallel, that's totally fine, just sideways like this. And then our last one, looks like we're going to have to change both of these into slope-intercept form. So I'll go ahead and do the top one in blue. So we need to subtract our 3x to the other side. So we have negative y equals negative 3x plus 8. And that y isn't by itself yet. We have to divide by that negative 1. So we get y is equal to a positive 3x and then minus 8. So now let's try the other one. I'll go ahead and do that one in green. We need to subtract our x on both sides. So we get 3y is equal to negative x plus 9. And divide everything by 3. So we have y is equal to a negative 1/3 x plus 3. So if we look at our slopes here, we have a positive 3 slope and a negative 1/3 slope. So these two slopes are reciprocals of each other and they have the opposite sign. So these ones are going to be perpendicular. And I'm a really bad speller, so I'll let you spell perpendicular. Okay, now let's write an equation for the line that passes through the point -5, -4, and is perpendicular to the line whose equation is this. All right, so in order to write an equation, we are given a point, and we need to have a slope. So it tells us that our slope for our equation has to be perpendicular to this slope. So the perpendicular slope to this would be the opposite sign, so I know it's going to be negative. And then the reciprocal, so we're going to flip it upside down. So 2/5. So I'm going to write an equation that goes through this point with that slope. So I think I'm probably going to write this equation in point slope form. That would be the easiest. So we're going to do y minus our y value is negative 4 is equal to negative 2/5 times x minus our x value is negative 5. And just like yesterday, let's make sure we turn those two negatives to a positive. Two negatives to a positive. And then we can go ahead and solve for y because we want all of our equations to end up in slope-intercept form. So we need to distribute that negative 2/5 first. So we have y plus 4 equals negative 2/5 x. And then when we distribute this negative 2/5 to your 5, you could use your calculator or the shortcut. So 5 divided by 5 is 1 times 2 is 2. So this one's going to be minus 2. And then we go ahead and subtract our 4 on both sides. So we end up with y is equal to negative 2/5 x and then minus 6. One thing to check in your answers every time, just to make sure you have done this right, double check your slope. It says perpendicular, so my slope that I wrote in my equation better be perpendicular to the slope that they gave us. And looks like that works out. They are perpendicular slopes. Just always double check that. All right, last example here. Write an equation for the line that passes through the same point, and this time it's going to be parallel to the line whose equation is this. Now, parallel means we're going to have the same slope, right? But this equation is in standard form, so it doesn't really tell us what the slope is. So we're going to have to put this equation into slope-intercept form just to figure out what the slope of their line is. So we need to go ahead and solve for y. We're going to subtract our 2x to the other side. So we have negative 2y is equal to negative 2x plus 11. Divide everything by that negative 2. And we get y is equal to, let's see, that's going to give me a positive 1x minus 11/2. And make sure you remember your slope is the one with the x, not this fraction over here. Okay? The slope is always with the x. So their slope is 1, and if our slope is going to be parallel, we want our slope to be 1 as well. So now we have a slope, and we have a point, and we can go ahead and write an equation in point-slope form. So we have y minus negative 4 is equal to our slope, which is 1, times x minus negative 5. And again, let's change both of these two negatives to a positive, two negatives to a positive. Okay, and then distribute that 1, which is actually super easy because it doesn't really change anything, right? We just get y plus 4 is equal to x plus 5, and then subtract our 4 on both sides. All right, so we end up with y equals x plus 1. And again, just do a quick double check. Our slope is a 1, and their slope is a 1. Looks parallel to me. Good job. All right, now you're going to play spoons. So the sub has the directions on the spoons game. It's played just like the game of spoons. And there's spoons. Yeah, I'll tell you where the spoons are.